about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. And welcome back to another That's Like WSUD episode, where we take an idea or a concept that we've read about, heard about, or otherwise come across, and we apply it back to water-sensitive urban design. In today's episode, we will be talking about the concept of local maxima and global maxima, and how they potentially pertain to water-sensitive urban design, policy making, and where we're going on this water-sensitive cities journey. To talk about this, we need to talk about a little bit about how ideas and concepts evolve, how we get better at things. We might well use some analogies of sport, but essentially about growth, whether that's of individuals, ideas, organizations. So let's look at this from a sporting point of view. In sport, there's an adage that gets around, which is essentially like, look, if you practice every day and aim to be a little bit better every day, that given a long enough time, you will be really, really good at whatever it is you choose to do, just by getting a little bit better every day. And what that's essentially saying is that you understand where you are now, and you understand broadly where to get there, where you want to get to, sorry. You understand where you are now and broadly where you want to get to. And while you might not know specifically how to get there, that if you make a little improvement today and a little improvement tomorrow and a little, you will eventually get to a lot, and you will get to your goal. Where that concept is fundamentally very solid. The reality is, for a lot of top performers in any field, the reason they're very good is because they have practiced for a very long time and have aimed to get a little bit better every time, and that's what gets them there. But there is one fundamental sticking point here. Have you ever seen that situation where a sports person, it's somewhere in Australia, so let's use cricket as an example, because there's a really timely example of where this might be going on at the moment. And if it's not exactly going on here, you'll get the analogy. The cricket's on at the moment, and the Marsh brothers are back in the Australian cricket team. Now they are very talented players. I'm not going to make an argument as to whether they should or shouldn't be in the team, but what is fair to say is that they have risen to prominence, shown that they were talented, made it into the team before, performed at the highest stage, and also not performed at the highest stage and been dropped by the team. And now most recently they're back in the team, and they've both played very well in recent matches. What sometimes happens with sports people is that by following this path of getting just a little better and a little better and a little better, they slowly get to a point where they kind of plateau and there's nowhere better to go. In fact, all the options from there kind of look like, in the short term, they take them downhill. And this might be because they've had at the very beginning a flaw in their technique, and they've gotten a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better every time with that flaw in their technique. But eventually, because of that fundamental flaw, they can only go so far. That person peaks, the opposition work them out. Suddenly, even though they might have seemed very good when they first joined the team, suddenly they're not doing so well because the opponents have worked them out, found this flaw, found a way to exploit it. And that person has to go away, they have to take several steps back, they have to break down their technique, and they have to get better, and they have to start that process of getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better every day, but with the right technique. Now, I don't know for sure if that's what's happened to the Marsh brothers, but the analogy fits here, right? Because they were talented people, they made the team, plateaued a bit at the top level, had to come away again, and have come back, and by all accounts, seem to be doing pretty well now. Now that plateau is what's called a local maxima. They have followed this situation where they've been in a starting spot, whoever this person is, and they've looked around. Now in reality, you have multiple options. From wherever you are at this point in time, you want to get better at things. You have a multitude of options coming out in all directions. But I have a piece of paper and I can only draw two. And the way this works is you look around and see, okay, you can only see so far into the distance on either of your two options here. So you have to make a choice. Which way will you go? And effectively what we do, we look at where we could possibly get to within each of the time frames that we can see, and we look at which one's better, and we pick the one that's better. In this instance, it's this one. So we come to here, and then we get to this point, and we look at the options from there, and we go, okay, we are now here. So at this point, we have options that either run off in this direction or run off in this direction. And we can only see to this point. So we look at those and we pick a next direction. The problem is that we don't know how far this is going to go. It could in fact be the case we've chosen to come left here, but in fact that this is very soon going to plateau, and very soon your only options are tapering away. Whereas in this direction over here, it's possible that there would have been a much higher outcome, but we couldn't see it. We couldn't see it, right? And here's the thing. So we've headed off this way towards what is actually a local maxima, because it is maximum, but only relative to the things beside it and close to it. Whereas if we'd gone this way, we would have got to a global maxima, because it is eventually headed all the way up to here, and you get to a peak, and it's downhill on all sides from there. But it's higher than this one, which at least makes it global relative to that other one over there. But from our starting point here, it didn't look like a very good choice to begin. And this is the problem with local maxima and minima, right? Is that because we're making our judgments on which way to go, even though we know we might eventually need to get to this level, or even higher, right? Because we're making our judgments on which way to go, based on what we can see in a very narrow frame here, we can sometimes head off in a direction that gives us good benefits in the short term, but plateaus out low, rather than going somewhere that's a much slower path potentially, or maybe even slow initially, but then ramps up massively and fast to get to the local endpoint. And so the lesson from sport here, just like potentially the Marsh Brothers, but certainly for many athletes out there, the lesson is that when you get to this local maxima, the only option in order to find another, in order to improve from there and find either a better local maxima or the global maxima, is to take a step back. To take what you've learned in getting here. I'm not saying this isn't a throw out the baby with the bathwater situation, but it is a situation of going, okay, what have we learned from this, and let's fundamentally change the situation. Because the reality is, if we draw this out, we could have an axis here, and we could have a whole bunch of potential maximas that we could get to. There could be a local one there, there could be a higher local one there, there could be, let's do it on this side, there could be a little blip over there, and there could be, in fact, there could be a really tall, how do I want to draw this? There could be one, let's do one more out here. There could be one that's really slow initially, but really tall to get to over there. And depending on where your starting point is, here, right, might depend on which one you end up with first. Because for example, if you started here, and you look at these two, well this one climbs a little bit, actually I'm going to draw that a little bit more like that, let's say. This one climbs more rapidly than this one first, so you'd start heading that way, even though that's the global maxima, right? Whereas if you were here, right, you might choose to head towards this, which is a local maxima, but it's a pretty good local maxima, right? Simply because of the first choices you made. And I would argue that this is a situation that we are at with in water sensitive urban design at the moment, in that we have got to a situation where people, like in the early 2000s through to 2010, I would say, had the first cracks at writing water sensitive urban design policy. And they followed their nose and they iterated and iterated upon what was available at the time, right? They made little steps forward and they did some really good stuff. Like they made, fundamentally, the stuff that we've got going on at the moment in water sensitive urban design is so much better and so much further beyond what anyone in the early 90s could have imagined or envisaged would actually be happening. It's really astounding. It's really great. It's not to be sneezed upon. This isn't a criticism. This is a reality of life. But what I feel has happened here, right, is that it's made this trek. And we've got to a point here where I'm not seeing, within the current paradigm of policies and practices, I'm seeing people still trying to iterate, still trying to take the little steps somewhere, still trying to do this and continue improving, but all their options are actually not delivering and either just plateauing out at this level or even stepping backwards in some situations. I would argue that using this analogy, using this experience, what we need to do is to go, okay, we are at a local maxima. We know we're not at the global maximum because the concept of a water sensitive city makes so much sense. The concept is sound, but it's how we get there that's very, very unclear. With this in mind, I would argue that we should take a page out of the sports person's book who steps away from the top level for a minute, goes, okay, I'm not going to play at that level for a minute. I'm going to go and practice back in the minor leagues. I'm going to play there. I'm going to tweak stuff. I'm going to change some stuff in my game and accept that I'm actually going to be bad at my game for a little bit. But I'm going to build back up. And when I come back, I'm going to be better than ever. That is the concept of local maxima and global maxima as I see it applying to water-sensitive urban design. This could apply to treatment technologies. This could apply to policy settings. This could apply to so much. It's the concept that's important here. We should be judging our activities and our decisions that we make next upon this concept. Do we think the current paradigm can continue to improve us in a meaningful way? Or do we need to be the sports person who takes a breather, goes back to the minor leagues, and then comes out and kicks some goals and scores 180 odd like Mitch Marsh just did? Sweet. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments. And also, I've clearly given away with this episode that I record these videos a little bit ahead of time because this video won't come out to January, and I just said Mitch Marsh just scored 180. That happened on like December 16th or something like that. Cool. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.